bonsoir. Oh, you didn't understand? So that was French for hello and good evening. Isn't it interesting to learn new things, especially now during the lockdown when we otherwise have so less work? And what better way to learn than meeting new people? Understanding this, we at Kidzpreneur have come up with the KidzLive initiative where you all can meet new people and keep yourself engaged by learning new things. So welcome to yet another episode of KidzLive. Today we have with us Amit and Ruzanna. Amit is an entrepreneur and enabler in the Indian startup ecosystem for almost a decade now. He advises companies on their Indian entry strategy. He's also a TEDx speaker and works closely for some government initiatives also. Welcome, Amit.
Thanks, Aditi.
Today we also have a very special guest from Armenia, Ruzanna. Ruzanna is working on projects that fuse storytelling, complex algorithms, and human-centered design for social impact at the Armenia National SDG Innovation Lab. The SDG Lab is the joint initiative of the Government of Armenia and the UN, supported by the UNDP in Armenia. The SDG Lab brings experimentation, evidence, and collaboration into policy making to imagine and build a sustainable development path for Armenia and beyond. Welcome, Ruzanna.
Thank you so much, Aditi, for introduction. It's great being here.
Ruzanna, so let's keep it very conversation. And I'm both of us and a lot of people would have a lot of questions for you. So when I saw your profile, you are a communication specialist and a designer, and you bring a lot of that aspect in whatever you're doing with UNDP. How does that started? Probably we can talk about your childhood in Armenia, and then whatever you're doing right now.
Oh yeah, I think our childhood might take a while to cover everything, but maybe my love for interesting things and I guess creativity, design, etc. comes from childhood, especially that I was born in Armenia, but I was raised in Russia. And so I moved with my family to Russia. I've learned Russian like earlier than Armenian, my own native language, right? And then I came back, I had to readjust, and I kind of had these two cultures in me when I was growing up. And it was an interesting thing because it was always helping me to look for different types of solutions to problems, to kind of, be open-minded, think about different insights where dealing with some different kind of things and problems. And maybe that's when I realized that I really and I always wanted to make some sort of change, even a small one in my community or in the world. I mean, when I was a kid, of course, I was determined to kind of make a change in the world, but then it became like more of a local one. So I think that's when I realized that my skills for problem solving and could be kind of channeled into some sort of positive activities. And that's when I've learned about social entrepreneurship, which was booming in the beginning of 2010s, I guess. Here, UNDP was the first one to create a social innovation lab. It was called Kolba Lab. It's kind of the predecessor of the Armenian National SDG Innovation Lab. Very much that's when I've learned about all the, crowdsourcing, citizen-centric design, social startups, and a lot of great things that were happening in Armenia and beyond Armenia. So I was introduced to design thinking, user research, and create other things. So I was working with them. I was their intern, and then at some point, and then I was shifting some sort of jobs. I was in the business, like private sector. But then at some point, I realized that I really want to make change. And at that point, I think the lab was just being established. And since it was policy making and my background, like my education is in public policy and like political science, I realized that kind of making change from above, like on the macro level, is kind of cooler in a way. And this is where the policy making comes in, because working with the government, you can learn about all the systems and structures, and you can scale up things on national level, right? That's why I guess I realized that, and also I love the SDGs like as a framework itself. I realized I want to do this job, and I think it's been already 3 years that I'm in this lab trying to make my small contribution to different issues and tackling complex problems. That should be it.
Interesting. So whenever people think about policy, or somebody who is working with government initiatives or agencies, I think nobody thinks from a design aspect, and that's where I think design champions like you come in. and say that design is a very important aspect, because the way you engage and develop certain things, the infrastructure as a whole for citizens, design is a very important part of it. And I think every department should have a designer, who can understand from both aspects on what you want to build and how the user will be using it. It's just about just building something because they are supposed to build a bridge or whatever. I think the user experiences also have to look into. Uh, so there are three initiatives which we talked about. The travel insights, and then there was this something which you said, that there's a work in labor, uh, and the education. If you can talk about that, because these three things are very relevant to India also. Travel, and I think travel obviously as one of the worst hit industries right now because of the pandemic. So if you can talk about them.
Mhm. It's such a shame that travel industry is hit the hardest, I guess, out of all the industries because of the COVID, and I hope they will recover it soon enough. But what happened with Travel Insights, I think about a year ago. So we were brainstorming in our team. It's usually, since we're kind of, experimentation island for the government, coming up with ideas based on their priorities, complex problems that they're trying to solve. So we're brainstorming something for the tourism, because it's, again, one of the biggest sectors, with quite of, I think, 14% of our GDP. So it's really important, and it was booming last year because a lot of people were rediscovering Armenia as a regional, hub interesting for travel and tourism. So what we're thinking, again, coming from the user research and user-centric design, was how to make travel experiences as tailor-made for the tourists as possible. And that's when we realized that there's lots and lots of open data out there which we can use to kind of inform policy, and pretty much those were the reviews that people usually leave online. I mean, voluntarily, a lot of people who visit some places, they share good and bad experiences, right? So we realized that instead of going and doing surveys and asking tourists how was their stay, what we can improve, we can scrape this data, and based on this, kind of inform policymakers how they can make changes, what kind of problems we have in Armenia, in different regions, like what they can make it better, and what kind of marketing campaigns they can create based on this. So that's how Travel Insights came about. We kind of scraped data from we scraped data from TripAdvisor, Booking.com, I think Airbnb, and different other platforms, and we had I think 170,000 reviews right now, and loads and loads of, I think, 500,000 insights right now. So what we did with its sentiment analysis, pretty much understanding the positive and negative, things in the text, and labeling it based on, let's say, ambience, stuff, etc., etc. So you can go there. It's a nice dashboard and platform where you can literally find issues or things that people were excited about based on the categories as well. And it's a very easy to use tool, pretty much for the primary user is the policymaker, but then also businesses use it extensively to understand what they can make better and what doesn't work, right? So there will be Travel Insights, I guess. The other one that you talked is Edit to Work. It's still in the progress, and pretty much what it means is coming from the issue. I think it's a persistent issue in lots of developing countries as well, and you mentioned India as well. I think there is this chronicle mismatch between labor market and education systems. Usually institutions are reluctant to kind of update their curriculum and create produce, let's say, employees who are fit for the needs of the market, of the businesses, private sector. And private sector is really quick in developing. Usually they go fast, they innovate, they do things right. But people who come out of universities, they usually, I don't know, here at least in Armenia, they learn by textbooks. They kind of learn whatever was important, let's say 10 years ago, right? So in order to kind of bridge the gap, so the institutions, universities produce people who are fit for the market needs, we kind of had this editor work project, which has two components. First one is a dashboard, like database dashboard. What we do is our AI algorithm goes to job announcement sites. It scrapes data like vacancies, and based on that, you can see what are the most demanded skills, most demanded jobs, and also we have this foresight and forecast component, pretty much to show what will still be, let's say, trendy in 5 years. So when kids who are about to graduate from school see the dashboard, they can see what professions are future proof and make decisions based on that, right? What we do is, since our calculations, foresight, and a lot of data shows that like STEM and in general, like IT industry is going to be the most trendiest in the future. What we do is we also use behavioral science to nudge people, especially school kids, to kind of opt for STEM related professions, so that they are sure that they will have jobs in the future, let's say. And also the other one is for university students. Here in Armenia, we don't have, like, the culture to work for free. Let's say go for volunteering, taking internships, and other opportunities to gain experience. And pretty much what we're doing with this project is to show them that these are the opportunities that they need to take to gain experience, so that later they are fit for the market and they have the experience needed to find a job. Yeah.
Interesting. So I'm hoping that because it's UNDP initiatives, all these things will be open source, because we can definitely use them in India as well. All these.
For sure.
All these
I think soon we can share also. The Travel Insights is open, like the resources. I think we can figure out a way of sharing also the lessons learned throughout the way. And editor work, once it's open, we'll make sure to share with you as well.
Yeah, I think definitely all the three things are very important for us. And the numbers in India, right? So we're talking about millions and millions of students going out, and I was telling you about this, the entire labor, chain transfer which is happening across states. So I think these are data points are very important to take decisions also, and I think again, designers like you can help us create these beautiful design and numbers, so that it doesn't look like it actually, they would love looking at these great insights and use them eventually.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. I think Aditi had some questions for you. I'll jump in whenever I think I have some questions, but Aditi, over to you.
Thank you, Amit. As Ruzanna, you were telling us that you brainstorm and come up with innovative ideas for the government and for your society. So, what do you think? Like, what role does innovation play in sustainable development?
Oh, innovation. Well, I mean, we usually at the lab, even the fact that we have the innovation in our lab name, we usually say it's a buzzword, right? And a lot of people have this love-hate relationship with it, thinking about like innovation is the technological breakthrough, and maybe it's not the best for, like, I don't know, maybe it's good for social progress, but not for the environment. But I think I'm for technology and innovation, and I mean those are the renewables, let's say, or solar panels that help to reduce the steam engine or electricity, right? And there are so many great things happening nowadays, and even with COVID, right? Innovation is kind of helping to find a vaccine, and soon this will be over, I hope. I think it plays a very important role because, like, let's say R&D creates the knowledge and it channels the information to innovation, and based on innovation and the knowledge that we get through research and stuff, we can find out the unsustainable patterns usually, and through this we can kind of test the effectiveness of different policy options and things like this. I think maybe I could give an example of one of our projects, how innovation is helping to reach sustainable development, and that's called AI for Mulberry. So pretty much SDG 16 is about peace and justice and institutions, and one of its targets is to have inclusive, participatory, and representative decision making on all levels, right? So what we have is a problem, and we I mean, the government said so they have pass and pass of letters going their way. People sending requests, lots of letters asking for things, etc. And even though we're pretty digitized, or at least trying to be digitized, a lot of people are still doing handwritten letters, right? And they had this issue of having piles of letters that they need to kind of understand, analyze, and distribute to different bodies and kind of answer the citizens. And they have their own internal, let's say, correspondence channel. It's called Mulberry, but it's not user-centric. So what we did is, for some sort of innovation using design thinking, again, design, and also AI, artificial intelligence, we created this project pretty much, which helps read the text from the scanned versions of the letters and distribute it automatically, so people don't spend time on reading those letters and, like, you know, distribute it, etc. So it optimizes lots of public services and also answer the FAQs automatically. So in a way, and also people now can track their letters being and see like the whole process as transparent as possible. And it's in a way they feel they are part of this decision making, they are part of all this process. And I think maybe this is just one example of how this can help, like, let's say, social dimension of the sustainable development. There are so many innovative approaches that help to kind of get closer to sustainable development. So yeah, I think that's the role that it's playing. Accelerating, let's say, the implementation of SDGs, even in a small way or not.
So as we, understood from what you were telling us, that innovation and then experimenting with all that we have come up is the way to, sustainable development, or maybe to, lead better lives in a simpler way.
Yes, very much yes.
So moving on, another question that we have for you is, why don't you, tell us something about the budding Armenian ecosystem? Like, how do you feel about its growth?
Oh, I'm sure you know that it's growing, and it's amazing. I mean, if you asked me about this like 10 years ago, maybe we didn't even have that many startups, but now wherever you're looking, everyone is, is empowered to do something with entrepreneurship, kind of trying something new, creating something, whether it's a social startup or not. I think it's amazing because we have this I think we're turning, at least we're saying that we're turning into this regional IT hub where I think around we have 1,000 ICT companies, and it's growing, and the ICT sector itself and the startup ecosystem is like the backbone of our economy. In a way, driving force, if not the backbone, but it's growing and we see the trends. I think the most important thing is that and I think this could be a lesson learned, is that what helped us is that we had a lot of diasporan Armenians, or Armenians who went abroad and brought back experience and expertise. And it was amazing because going to Silicon Valley, seeing how things are working there, bringing that experience and knowledge here helped to kind of boost the ecosystem even more. And the best part is nowadays some of the startups are expanding beyond Armenia. So we have US-based like startups. We have startups from abroad coming here because due to, let's say, support from policymakers, because we have tax breaks for startups, it's easy to make business here. A lot of people from Russia, Belarus, like, let's say, from our region, right, and Eastern Europe, they usually come here. And I think the Armenian startup ecosystem is not going to stop anytime soon. They're growing, and even during COVID-19, this lockdown period, this was the most important, I think, ecosystem that was still thriving, and they kind of kept the economy going. So the hope is that someday will become, I don't know, like Israel, small lockdown country, but kind of having high hopes and like potential. And I think the only thing missing, and this is what we're seeing nowadays, is maybe we're hungry a bit for hard mathematics and hard science, because there are lots of coders, programmers, but not a lot of scientists. And this is one thing that everyone's trying to address and develop. So maybe several years later, you will hear about us as one of the cool startup, I don't know, hubs, regional.
And it's great to know that, people are taking risks and starting their own startups. So, and they're growing in numbers. That's such a great story to know. Uh, that's great. We have like more questions for you, which are related to this context only. So, we say innovation and out of the box thinking is the future. So, how can we promote these things at the school level?
Oh, such a nice question. Let me think. I mean, I've told you about the editor work, right? So we're also doing this foresight and forecast of the skills that will be trending. And you're right. Out of box thinking, creativity are the most important skills that will be not only needed today, they will be needed tomorrow and even more. And this is so important to teach kids to go beyond borders, as you said, experiment and do stuff. I think for this, it's not enough to just show the skill set and kind of like, in painting or with artists, it's usually you show a lot of paintings, you show the techniques, you might end up drawing some nice painting, but it might not be creative, right? So I think besides showing all the skill set, one thing for kids to start thinking out of books will be to create some sort of experiences for them, situations, and maybe kind of role playing, some sort of open-ended discussions, showing them different, I don't know, situations where they need to come up with different solutions for the problems, so that they know there is no one right answer, and create some sort of environment where their failure is even welcome, because usually, like, given my culture and in Armenia, is usually there is one right answer, and it's usually if you fail, it's bad for you. But it's through failure that people learn a lot, new skills, they learn how to do things. It's an experience which is important for group. And I think that's how you end up doing startup, because you just take risks, right? So I think creating this fostering environment, a conducive environment where you're free to do things, where nobody says this is wrong, just try again, go ahead, experiment a lot, is the most important thing. Here in Armenia, we have like several good examples. I think one thing they did for kids to develop strategic thinking was to make chess a compulsory part of curriculum. So kids learn not only play chess, there are a million ways you can, like, move your figure, right? That's how you learn the different types of things that you can do. Also, there are these after school classes at Tumo, which is like a technology, creative technology center. Again, kids go there, learn programming, illustration, graphic design, I don't know, different things. They go for hackathons, learn, like, they become amazing kids for this labor market. Usually most of them end up to becoming programmers later on. And we have also these robotics classes in some of the regional schools. So kids get to play, not only they learn programming, but also get to play with Lego construction and stuff like that, which is also, again, I think good for boosting creativity and out of box thinking. So yeah.
So, as what I could understand from you is that, we should promote the kids to experiment on their own and find out what is right and what is wrong for them. So that it's not, they are not learning it theoretically, but practically, and having that experiences in their life. And also, though this coronavirus may have many negative impacts, there's one thing, that's happening in the positive direction.
I think, Aditi,
Yeah, I guess she froze. Maybe.
yeah, the internet went on. Right. So, let me probably jump in and ask the question. One of the things which we were talking about, how much do you think policy making impacts innovation, uh, and vice versa? And if there are experience, if you can share some experiences from your working with UNDP.
Oh yeah, I think it plays pretty important role. Um, Innovation, in a way, like for countries especially, it's some sort of it underpins competitiveness, right? So it helps to tackle issues and innovation, at least in Armenia, but I think in a lot of countries, it's a major public policy goal. And it's not surprising that we have like this fostering innovation policy and strategy that we're developing. I think although our ecosystem, like IT ecosystem, startup ecosystem, innovation ecosystem, in a way was pretty much grassroots. Like it was about bottom up rather than top down for the last 10 years. So it was pretty much sporadically developing. It was important that the government and policymakers were supporting this field and sector, right? These tax breaks, some sort of funding, some sort of help to the startups, making it super easy to start a startup, or I don't know, an R&D, that was important. So like having conducive policy environment is really important. So I would say policy making plays its own role. Let's say, and UNDP, for UNDP, it's pretty important because their main stakeholder and partner is the government. So having the go from the government and support from the government, whether it's and it's usually some sort of in-kind contribution. Sometimes we need data for, like, you know, doing some sort of research data to understand how to create and design a behavioral experiment or data related project. If they don't give it, it's usually like problematic, right, to go on with the project. So I'd say this is the part where policymakers play important role if they support an innovation boost that way. And innovation, in a way, is important for policymaking as well, because I told you about education institutions, but it should be true also for the policymakers as well, because unlike like private sector, they are a bit like reluctant and slow in moving and adapting to realities, right? So innovation and bringing innovative, let's say, methods into policy making helps them to address issues like faster, to find out some sort of problems, complex issues. And that's actually what we're doing at the SDG Lab and UNDP as well. We're usually capacitating policymakers with our own tool set and toolkit, and helping them to identify problems in their day-to-day life and coming up with a solution themselves. So kind of having our own startups within the government as well. So that's also an interesting approach, I guess.
Nice. I think this is the last 5 years or 5 to 10 years. I think the things have changed. The governments, rather than creating these own challenges, and trying to solve them on their own, identify this crowdsourcing model, which you were, talking about earlier also. I think that's the way to go it, so that you can involve a lot of innovators, engineers, of all, segments, to come up and create solutions which actually are long term, rather than, just solving it like a quick fix.
Exactly, absolutely. That's an amazing approach. And the most important part, like when you see the policymakers, they're like, oh, I can do this too. So it's like exciting for them too, because they get out of their own shell, right? Their routine, and they get to learn about innovation and experiment themselves. So yeah.
Right. So I think, from own experience, I can totally relate, because all these policymakers have to go through, some kind of very tough exams to pay wherever they are, right? So these are smart people end of the day, and they are also creative in their own sense.
Exactly.
So these are the good venting points where they can, oh, okay, I would love to do this, or we can do this. So I think that's where entrepreneurs should probably work with them to figure out how do you engage that creative side of these guys, rather than, just trying to go and sell their solutions. Right. Great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So Ruzanna, it was absolute a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking out time. We are out of time, and I don't think we have, any more questions for you. But we would love to invite you again and possibly talk about the open source, programs which you're doing. And
Sure.
yeah. And I also want to thank you. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it was my pleasure being here and talking to you, and it was super interesting. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And I will just thank you everyone who is watching us through Facebook Live. it's at Kidzpreneur, we are trying to create these values and bring, right kind of professionals and educators and change makers like Ruzanna today to talk about their experiences so that parents and kids can learn more and more career options. They can learn more about the things which are happening in the outer world and how we can, survive and sustain during the pandemic and after that. Thank you so much, and keep watching Kids Live.